Good morning, all. I'm Jason Howden, Chief Innovation Officer at Revizto. It's a pleasure to be here today to discuss live our recently assembled and created Digital Design and Construction Report 2025. I'm joined today by an esteemed panel of experts from around the world. Alex Belkofer from North America, Steve Appleby from Melbourne, Australia, and Eva from New Zealand, Christchurch, New Zealand. Alex, would you like to introduce yourself and maybe tell a fun fact?
Sure, sounds good. Well, hello, everybody. Good morning and good afternoon. My name is Alex Belkofer, Senior VDC Director with McCarthy Building Companies, based here in St. Louis, Missouri, in the United States. 18 years in industry, 8 with McCarthy. I currently serve as Senior VDC Director, helping to lead both our regional and national initiatives for virtual design and construction. Happy to be here and support the mission that Revizto is heading down. And thank you again to Revizto for publishing this amazing report. And that's why we're all here today. My fun fact is, as a lover of sports and music, I have not had the chance to meet a lot of my idols throughout the course of my life, but I did get to meet one in particular that was very transformational for me. If you're familiar with the internationally known band Metallica, I got to meet James Hetfield, who was the lead singer a few years ago on my way to a rock festival, and that was just a very amazing experience for me to meet someone that I've looked up to over the years and love their music. So that's my fun fact.
Hi, everyone. My name is Eva. Originally, I'm from Russia, and I would say my last 10 years is pretty much a fun fact. So I have arrived to New Zealand first time for the honeymoon. It happened just 2 years after the significant earthquake in Christchurch. And I used to be a macroeconomist and decided to change my life together with my husband and started my career from scratch in Christchurch in design and construction industry as a building services BIM lead. I started from scratch as a building services drafter because, Christchurch community after the earthquake didn't really care about Russian macroeconomists. So yeah, I really enjoy this game, and I would say that BIM and design, especially designs of services, is the coolest game we can play as adults and professionals. And my biggest passion is cross-discipline coordination in multi-million dollars complex projects like airport, national galleries, hospitals, and so on. That's me.
Thanks, Eva. I'll go next. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. My name's Steve Appleby, Chief Strategy Officer, co-founder at IIMBE. Based here in Australia. I've been in industry 25 years, started off as a quantity surveyor, commercial management and construction. 2010, I started ACOM's BIM consulting business. And then in 2020, we started IIMBE. IIMBE works across the entire life cycle from strategy to operations. We focus on the people and aligning process and data and technology. We've got a fantastic team here in Australia. We've also launched a UK business over the last 3 months, which is absolutely flying. So very happy to be here this morning. Fun facts. I managed to get myself on stage at a Fatboy Slim concert in my earlier days, and then managed to get my way backstage somehow, and that turned into a very fantastic and slightly debaucherous night. I won't go into too much more details about that, but that was a great night. And I'm not sure, but it looks to me, Alex and Eva, that our esteemed host, Jason, has potentially dropped off the call. I know he did have some technology issues this morning with his laptop and some updates. So as he is also controlling the deck, I'm not entirely sure what we do.
I think we can keep going. You guys can see my screen, right? I have the slides.
Okay, fantastic.
That's
fantastic.
Cool.
While we wait for Jason, I would say let's go ahead and get into kind of the first segment of this. Stephen and Ava, we had some great conversations with Jason around the publishing of the report and just kind of looking at like the cross section of who have responded, some of the data that was responded back with. If we want to maybe just open it up here and maybe just get some initial thoughts from your guys' perspective on, what did you hear and see from the report? What struck you as interesting? What kind of things resonate with you as we look to try to expand the conversation around collaboration and bridging the gap across the AECO industry? Whoever wants to start first.
I would say the biggest insight for me, it was, first of all, that we got some data. So we talk about problems in the industry like technologies and budget overspending, but we never saw how much money exactly do we overspend and how we can help it, so why it happens and how to fix it. And I would say when we're talking about the integration of technologies, like in Mott MacDonald, we have always digital team, we have engineering team, and it's amazing people who absolutely professional in their own fields. But my strong opinion that we need someone like unicorns who can join those teams, who can ask engineering team, what guys do you need, what you want to achieve, and how technologies could help you. And from the other side, when engineers, they always so busy, but if you have at least someone who can inspire them to start asking questions to digital team, how we can do it better, it will be the win-win for everyone. So yeah, my suggestion for integration technologies is, first of all, having your team and someone who can inspire others. And the second thing, make integration of technology super quick. It should be like Instagram videos. It's like, if you can't sell the technology for 1 minute or 30 seconds, it's not going to be integrated, most likely, unfortunately.
I love that, Eva. Stephen, your perspective.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. Fantastic report. It's good to see a global snapshot of industry. It doesn't surprise me. It seems there's still a lot of fragmentation across industry, how we produce assets, still a lot of friction and a lot of waste and inefficiency, and that's been around for a long, long time. But there's a new generation of tools like Revizto that really starting to help bring industry together around that kind of collective digital fireplace. So I think there's a lot of opportunity. The probably surprising fact for me is only 22% of respondents we're talking about data centers. I don't know about anyone else, but we're seeing a huge proliferation of data centers. It's a big focus for us. So that was probably the only real surprising that it was so low on there. But great. Great report. Looking forward to the conversation.
Absolutely. Yeah, just real quick, I want to hit on a little bit of what you just said, Stephen. Like, not a lot of surprise from the data. It was good confirmation, but what's interesting to me is that with some of that fragmentation and with the high level of adoptions of technology and teams having a thirst for more collaboration, there's still more left to be done, right? And Armin said that in the report, if you all have had a chance to read it. There's much more work to be done. And it doubles down on the fact that technology has really planted itself strongly in the day-to-day practices of the AECO industry, but there's more to be done from the sense of aligning standards, aligning contracting methodologies to open up the doors for collaboration beyond what the tools can do. Really more focused on the people side of our business and getting to a new normal of what I like to call digital delivery, right? Moving kind of beyond BIM, beyond virtual design and construction, getting to this new normal of the way that we can use these tools in very seamless and integrated ways, but people have to come together to embrace and accept the new ways of working as projects are demanding faster schedules, more precise budgets, faster turnover and streamlining into facility operations and actual day-to-day business for the clients that we serve. So it kind of puts a further emphasis on like what we already know, but like the importance now and the weight of what we need to do is maybe heavier than it has ever been. So let's get going, as Armin says. Looks like our esteemed host is making his way back to the webinar. Yeah. So Jason,
you've just been backstage with Fatboy Slim, haven't you, Jason?
Oh, my goodness.
There you go.
It was nearly the first Dow Alienware to make it to Mars. So thank you for your patience. You guys are
There you go.
legends.
We're good. We were just giving a quick summary of our thoughts, high level, on the report that came out, and we were just finishing the slides. We really haven't gotten into the meat of the deck yet, so timing is good.
Awesome. First question and insight from our report that we were most interested about, and from my own career in the construction industry, budget overruns and cost overruns in the industry was right up there. 45% of AEC leaders said their project typically overruns by 11 to 20%, despite everything that goes into preventing that. Alex, I'm keen to hear from your perspective as a large contractor, what it means for you and what kind of considerations do you put in place to prevent these kind of overruns, and kind of talk about how we might be able to go better in this space.
Yeah, well, to me, the overruns speak to two things. It speaks to the heavy importance on building it virtually first is actually what we're going to physically build. So you've got that digital blueprint. And if we do that right, which I do feel like we do that fairly well at McCarthy, we strive to for sure. And we definitely want to make the adjustments and the continuous improvements where we need to. But it's the second is getting comfortable with change management. And what I mean by that is if we're laser focused on building it right digitally, we need to be ready to prepare for the inevitable, which is when an owner may change their decision on something. If field deviation happens and we need to rework it and go back to that digital plan. And since those things are always happening job to job and you never know when, you just got to get comfortable being uncomfortable. So to me, I think a lot of it is the change management of, do you have good standard practices in place for building virtually? Do you have good alignment with the team on when change management needs to happen? How does that get blocked and tackled? Do you have that scoped the right way so that the team isn't coming back to you later saying, hey, we didn't have project controls in place to be able to handle changes to the design at this stage in the game. We're doing more and more design build, IPD, fully integrated design assist, bringing trade partners into the design process. So to me, to streamline all of that, good practices in place, good change mechanisms in place, and having the team really well lined out to start to flatten that out and hopefully decrease that curve, because ultimately we're in a very dynamic industry. Change is inevitable, but I think that we can do a lot to be proactive and plan for what we already have experienced for many of our careers, which is change will happen, field deviations will happen. We still have human beings doing the things that we do, right? And so we all strive to be perfect, but we know that we're not. So just having a good plan in place to tackle those things, both from a contracting side, from a standard standpoint, and best practices and protocols. I'll start with that.
Awesome. Eva, I see that 46% of the respondents noted that design errors and incomplete plans was a key feature in this area that leads to overruns. So they're really keen to hear your thoughts coming from an engineering design perspective and the kind of steps that you've taken to mitigate kind of this with technology or BIM or process, etc.
Yeah, first of all, I would absolutely agree with Alex that strategical planning is the key. And unfortunately, at this stage in New Zealand is not really often major projects running design and build. So usually we have design and build after that. So my strong opinion that early engagement of the contractor is the future. So as far as we can ask good planning questions at the early stages of the project, so like talking to future construction company about the construction sequences, construction stages, and thinking about strategical planning of the design itself, it definitely will help all our projects to run better and save money. Like if, for example, at the detailed design, someone making a decision to change the location of the plant room, it will never help the project to run smoothly, because it's not just the moving the plant room from level to level, it's redesign of all services around. So based on my experience, first concept stage, we need to focus on the plant rooms and risers. Then we should focus on the reticulation strategy for services and align all design intention strategies. Because again, if we step to this process later on, we lose the money and we lose the time, of course, for designing. So yeah, strategical thinking is the first one. And the second one, lessons learned. I always engage people with whom I work, with whom we are going to work in future, to share lessons, because this is how we learn. We learn from each other. We learn from our own mistakes. And for example, if significant problems in design and construction happen in one hospital project, definitely share your lessons to keep them in mind for the next project.
I know some valuable insights there. Steve, you're from a QS background. I'm keen to get your thoughts from a financial side of it. You know, hearing what Alex and Eva have said around upfront planning. You know, maybe there needs to be more time upfront planning and prototyping and having more certainty about the end outcome. You know, what are your thoughts on the financial impact if this? You know, so many people are saying their projects are overrunning. Is that investment just at the wrong end of the process?
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And I love what Alex said, that McCarthy are delivering under an IPD framework. So, you know, that's amazing. For those who don't know, integrated project delivery, IPD, you know, it's a bespoke form of contract where, you know, the client is in early, the contractor's in early, the design team are in early, and they've all got skin in the game, essentially. My first title back in 2010 was BIM and IPD research leader. And I, being a QS, fundamentally believe that the success of any project starts with procurement, and the forms of procurement that drives incentives, that drives behavior. You know, one of the reasons I got into BIM in the first place was, you know, I was fortunate enough, my first project was Terminal 5 at Heathrow Airport back in 2003. That was the largest project in Europe at the time. It didn't go over budget, and there was only one variation on that project. And the reason for that was, you know, they had an informed client. They had an open book bespoke form of contract, which was kind of like an early IPD framework, where, you know, all costs were on the table. Everyone was in a pain gain sharing mechanism. So, you know, we win together, we lose together. But, you know, your overhead and prelims and profit margins to an extent are locked in, and there's upside. So the collaboration that engendered in that project team was just fantastic to see. And you know, my goal is to kind of recreate that in all projects. And I see kind of BIM and tools like Revizto is really enabling that, because all we're trying to do is make sure we've got the right access to the information we need to make the decisions, and the decisions change based on the life cycle, you know, phase of the project. So, you know, yes, the stats are right. Lots of major projects blow out. We've seen it in Melbourne with the Metro, you know, that was 6-7 billion. It's now 14 billion. And we've seen it with, you know, HS2 in the UK. We've seen it with lots of projects. And yeah, I think it's twofold, really. One is, you know, understanding the right kind of time allocation and where to put the resources to get the best value. We seem to be rushing to hit deadlines, and you know, rushing to get design out when we don't really have the information. So that just causes confusion further down the line for the contractors and their supply chain. And you know, yes, we've hit a milestone, but it has impacts later on. And certainly, you know, Eva mentioned ECI, early contractor involvement. You know, we seem to still have some pretty antiquated procurement certainly in Australia. You know, D&C is still a thing where we don't really give enough time for the D and put all the pressure on the C, and that just sets your whole project up for a fight. And to be fair, some clients are willing to do that, but yeah, let's hope that we see more ECI, we see more IPD, and better allocation of resources and better planning.
Jason, I got to say
Excellent.
one thing real quick on Stephen's note there about decision making specific to the cost overruns. I am seeing in real time the ability for folks to make quick decisions from the right source of information is oftentimes where this really starts to fall down, and we start to get impacted. And what I mean by that is us as technology professionals have to do a really, really good job at guiding our teams to the right information from the right tool at the right time, because oftentimes speed to that decision, dollars are ticking away as every second ticks off the clock. And so we've got to be laser focused on making that simple, palatable, easily accessible with the myriad of technologies that are out there. A lot of our teams are thirsty for the simplest form of making these decisions, but it's tough because of all the tools that we've got in our toolkits within our organization. So something to be very mindful of as we try to think about how we help the industry lean down these cost impacts.
Before we start to think about technology and stuff, I'm keen to pick up on a point that Steve raised around Terminal 5. And the point I'm thinking about is 2003. It's 2025. Quite a few years have rolled by in that journey. And from my own personal experience, my own BIM journey and career pathway also resonated from the same project, T5. So Alex, from North America, what kind of key projects are you seeing that have been on this journey that might have been lighthouses and moments in time where maybe, to Eva's point, we can learn some positive lessons? It's not lost on me that maybe we talk too much about the negative and not enough about the positive outcomes of projects.
Sure. Well, maybe not necessarily project specific, but market specific. Like McCarthy is a leading healthcare builder in the United States. So we do lots of healthcare, lots of high-rise healthcare, lots of complex healthcare. I feel like every healthcare project that we undertake, we're trying to pull the best practices, the best standards, the best tools to streamline those jobs because they're tough, right? Complex MEP systems, owners that have lots of stakeholders, trying to make timely decisions for procurement, really trying to pull the curve forward for decision making. And it's difficult, right? If you're familiar with, healthcare owners or the healthcare systems, it's difficult to get information kind of through the pipeline because of the amount of stakeholders, because of the amount of equipment in those facilities. And so to me, whether it's a healthcare job here in the Midwest, like a BJC, or it's a healthcare project out on the West Coast, we're doing a lot of work right now with UC Davis, that healthcare system. Lots of requirements, lots of standards, lots of things that need to be considered in the design cycle. But when you get into construction, things like procurement and things like HJ approvals, like all those things, you've got to plan that out so that you don't see these impacts. So to me, I look back on, like in my career, a lot of it was healthcare and some campus-based work, like a lot of higher ed work. You really got to be mindful and thoughtful about those cornerstone projects for like collecting all those stakeholders early, the standards early, trying to plan ahead as best you can for all those requirements, because they'll trip you up. If you get down that chain and you haven't gone through that life before, you could definitely start to see yourself getting impacted by a lot of the data you see from this report.
Yes. And do you have a significant project, Eva, that might stand out as we need to learn from this one?
Yeah, I would say it's definitely healthcare projects. And again, based of what I saw in the last 5 years in the industry, some projects like schools or libraries, I know they all want to be unique, but there should be definitely a standardization in design, in planning, and in tools we use. And this is like, we need to have the core to use again and again for different projects, core of planning, core of technology using, and so on.
Yes. Well, that's a great segue into our kind of next insight. I'll just quickly share screen on that one for everyone to see it. Our next insight was really around the technology and the I guess the cost of technology, but the interesting I guess insight that we gained from our report was it wasn't the cost of the technology, it was the cost of time being the biggest barrier to deploy technology and get the benefit of technology. Eva, since you're in that kind of design space and technology is probably used heavily, keen to hear your thoughts on what it takes to implement technology at a global company.
I already shared when you, Jason, been away. So I already shared my thought about that. Like, you always need to have the link between digital team and engineering team or construction team. So you need someone who can explain. And I'm happy to share, so I don't want to repeat it again, but I'm happy to share one case we recently had in our Christchurch office, when quite experienced engineer, spent about 40 minutes trying to identify the clash in one software, was absolutely frustrated because it's engineer. So this person wanted to spend her time for design and reviewing, but she spent it just trying to identify the problem. Then she was frustrated. She came to me and asked, like, could you please help me, because I don't understand how to use this program. And I spent 10 minutes of my time. So in total, we have 40 minutes spent in. We identified the issue, but we found it's not critical for construction and for coordination. It was a minor, definitely minor clash, like between secondary pipes versus cable tray. But we found that the most critical issue, like cable tray running above walls in the corridor, wasn't picked up in this particular case. So that's why I'm a big fan of Revizto, not because because what you guys create. I really like the idea when you come to us first and asking us what do we need, what do we need to achieve our goals and resolve the problems. Because in Revizto, I know that it's just one click and I will jump straight away to the area in Revit where I have the problem. So it's just a comparison of 40 minutes and 2 minutes. And if you don't have the person who can explain it to management, who can explain it to engineers, you just will keep losing money.
Yes, and then I can also imagine that, you know, the RFI trail just builds because somebody sends an incomplete response, and that generates another query, and the downstream knock-on effect goes from 40 minutes to 4 hours to 4 days to 4 weeks, and probably naturally leads to overruns. Alex, what's kind of your experience of technology adoption and I guess pace to adopt in the field? And I'm mindful that a lot of people view technology as in the office space. What are you doing out there in the field? How are you encouraging the next generation?
Yeah, well, a lot of our approach has been to just get to the point of attack. If some folks have heard the story about McCarthy and Revisto's journey, a lot of it was speaking directly to the needs of our superintendents, the people ultimately responsible for execution in the field. And so when we really started to meet with our superintendents several years back now, we found the folks that were what we called virtual builders, people that were non-technical people, non-technology people that use these virtual tools to plan the work. And those folks were people that either grew up alongside it or were impacted and influenced by it, to where they started to recognize, without even any coaching or training, how these digital tools could make their life easier. And so we latched onto those folks, and we determined that we needed to build more of those people, more virtual builders. And the only way to do that was to get out to the point of attack, show them the tools, ask them their pain points, find ways that we as construction technologists could help address and alleviate that pain. And then we started to build best practices and standards around that feedback. And so as we brought them amazing tools, such as Revizto, they started to coach and influence us on ways that these tools could and should be helping us, which then further shaped how we helped guide and educate our team. So we started there, right, at the point of attack, and then actually started to work backwards, and then started to work with our pre-construction teams on the office side of the business to show them, hey, if we can use these tools up front, these people are ready to consume it and are now familiar with it at the point of attack on our construction project. So took a two-pronged approach to get to the point of attack first, work our way backwards. And now on the office side of the business, we've got technology steering committees, tech cohorts. We've got like these internal champions that are looking at all of our tools and really looking for ways to optimize and streamline our design-facing approach before we then get into the field where these tools need to carry their weight further to execute the work.
Awesome. Steve, thinking about your position and knowledge and experience in procurement, and particularly the kind of role that you have as digital consultants advising governments and large significant projects on how to implement technology to, you know, get their projects successfully done on time, on budget. What kind of considerations do you allow for this pain, I guess, for technology adoption? Does that play a significant role in the way that you draft your BIM execution plans or digital engineering guides?
Yeah, I think 2 points really. Just keep it simple. I think, you know, adoption is best driven by proof of value. You know, it's got to work. It can't be overly complicated. I think, you know, work for some pretty large organizations, and there's a litany of examples of, you know, and maybe we don't help ourselves sometimes. We want the latest shiny thing, and we overcomplicate it, and probably, you know, we don't really understand the use case. So yeah, 100% keep it simple. You know, Chuck and Navis works in a site office, with like Eva's example, you get some engineers who've got no idea how to use that tool, and that tool is probably not for them. We need a simpler set of tools, like Revizto. We use Cubics a lot on site at the minute. It's really, quick, easy, powerful. But I think the whole time element of adoption of new technology or any technology, for me, I think there's a disposition by the executive to want something shiny. I want the augmented reality. I want the kind of VR stuff. I want, the shiny kind of tools. When I bet my bottom dollar, 99% of the organizations that we work for, that that are on this call, they haven't got that fundamental underlying approach to how they structure and manage their data, because that's the stuff that can unlock much more value, and that's a very time-consuming process. And as an industry, we get paid by delivering projects. So you might have an awesome design team that have come up with some way of working. You got an awesome construction team. As soon as that project's finished, they're off. They're disbanded for a start, so it's hard to capture the lessons learned, and then they're off to a new site. And then they're having the same conversations, trying to convince the new team that this is a tool that works or a process that works. So I think, trying to keep it simple and not biting off too much too soon, but also having that underlying focus on data as an asset to the organization. I think especially as we start to advance with AI and everything else, there's a huge amount of value, but it takes time and it's boring. You know what I mean? It is fundamentally quite boring, but that's where the value is. So I encourage it.
I think you raised a couple of really good points there, and what I'm thinking about is this lack of policy or mandate. There's been a lot or a plethora of BIM industry guidelines or standards out there, but not all of them are in sync with each other. Some are adjunct to each other. What do you feel the impact is on lack or over-mandation of digital requirements?
Yeah, I got some strong views on this one.
Well, I'd love to hear them.
I think, well, we watch. I love the mandate that came out of the UK in BS 1192, and that evolved into 19650, and that drove, a whole heap of adoption. But I think where potentially we could have done that better collectively as an industry, we try to come up with we try to make it too complicated again. Like we're talking about LODs, and now like I've got clients coming up to me going, "Yeah, Steve, like we're going to do LOD 400 on this project." I'm like, "What are you talking about? Like you don't understand what that is, and if you did, then you probably wouldn't want it because it's super expensive. So let's just try and actually define what you want, when you want it, and how you want it, and break that down." So I think we were fortunate enough to work with the Victorian government chief engineer. She had a mandate to look at a whole heap of reform across Victoria's infrastructure spend, and that was $100 billion annually. So we looked at 19650 was emerging at the time. So we wanted standardization, and we wanted to keep the supply chain in check, because the supply chain works across borders. They want consistency, so they know that if they're going to work in New South Wales, they're going to work in Victoria, they're going to work in Queensland, they're going to work in New Zealand. We're kind of working to the similar processes. So there was a whole heap of templates and guidance around that policy, which was okay. I know, I'm a senior executive. I've got a 2-page brief. I know why this is important. I should put some allocation of funding towards it. And then I'm a technical practitioner. Okay, now I know, here's a standard form. And we did this 10, 15 years ago, Jason, with Collaborate. And I think there's a gap. Collaborate was essentially a lot of the largest organizations in Australia, the digital leads coming together to, try and have a conversation about how we can make industry, more efficient and accelerate adoption, I guess. So, yeah, I think mandates are great. Some of the underlying work with building smart and kind of data schemas, and also, the globalization and the local annexures for 9650, they're great. What we're seeing at the minute in the UK, which is really starting to actually drive adoption, is the outcomes from the Royal Commission from Grenfell Tower and the updated Building Safety Act, and this concept of a golden thread, which is basically how do we digitize decisions that are made. And to get through this new gateway approval process, you have to, developers are seeing dollars because their projects are stalling if they can't evidence that they've done that they have this information. So, okay, well, this BIM stuff that everyone's been talking about, and it's nice. Now it's got a super commercial imperative. So, yeah, I see, a very exciting future going forward.
Trust but verify. I really like that kind of trend that you're witnessing from, ANZ and the UK. Alex, what are you seeing in North America?
Well, it's interesting. You kind of alluded to the fact that we've got lots of standards out there, guidelines that are out there, things that have been out there for a long time, but you're seeing different levels of acceptance of them. You've got firms that are heavily leveraging standards, and then you have firms that don't have any. And I think that at some point it's got to become more unified, especially here in the United States. We don't have an ISO 19650 mandate or any PAS 1192 mandates, things like that here. There's interest from some groups, but ultimately, in some ways, still feels like the Wild West a bit here, because no one has really come in as the authority to say, for us to standardize digital delivery in the US, we're going to follow these things. I think something does need to happen sooner than later. And a lot of organizations that I'm tied in with, and I'm trying to push my passion through, which is to get us there. It needs to be something that is flexible and accepted, not forced upon to an extent. So we've got to find that balance here in the US. I think that there's amazing things out there, right? We have the National BIM Standard, which, if you don't know, NIBS, National Institute of Building Sciences, that's been out there for a long time. We're on version 4. Do lots of people use it? Not enough is the answer to that. And so no matter how much some of our firms say that we're going to use these things, it needs to become accepted. It needs to become the new normal. I do feel like standardization is going to be critical for us to take this next big leap beyond the collaborative tools that we have. We've got to take that leap to the people side of the collaboration, the acceptance that we're going to openly share information, that we're not going to, block ourselves from that because contracts are in the way. Having the same common understandings of things like LOD. That's a great example, Stephen, right there. Like when I say LOD, what's in your mind? When you say LOD, what's in my mind? Those things got to become more normalized for the US to take that big next step. I'm here for it. I'm ready to do it with the folks that are willing to lean in and take that charge. But definitely going to require a lot of what I believe is going to be cross partnerships between primary organizations like the AIA and the AGC and DBIA and NIBS and others that are really the authorities that people look to for engineering, architecture, and construction best practice and standardization, and ultimately, right, serving these large customer bases that are thirsty for training, thirsty for better ways of doing business to drive business value. So we've got to get there, Jason. Is the quick and simple answer. We can get there. We have good things, but now we've got to start connecting those things together and getting people to accept them, not so much force it upon them.
I really like where you're going with that, and a brilliant segue into, I guess, the next insight that I'd like to share with our team on the call this morning. New tech, big projects, bigger possibilities. It was fascinating to see in the insights come through that infrastructure was, head and shoulders above the rest within, I guess, the sectors where growth and demand is actually coming from our global community. And it really struck a chord with me that the world is going through this big investment in this space, but at the same time, huge possibilities with technology. Everybody's talking about automation, AI, but more importantly, I got really kind of a bit of a tear in my eye when I saw BIM and collaboration. Eva, keen to hear your thoughts on, what the future holds. What are you thinking about? What trends are you seeing that are going to help you deliver your projects better going forward?
Sorry, first of all, I want to come back to the previous question and add few seconds for the standardizations in the industry. And I would say it will be the answer for your current question as well. We can see lots of discussions about the standards in digital delivery and so on, but back into the basics. So the main idea for us as designers for construction is to deliver the building or its infrastructure project, to deliver the new something, right? And it's based on the model. It's not based on how many programs we use. And digital, so technologies, they don't help us to resolve the problem. They help us to identify the problem. So I think we need, like working so many years, I never saw for example, coordination standards. There are standards for engineers, mechanical, hydraulics, structural engineers and construction, but no one talking how to combine them all together. What questions ask from building services to structural team, for example. And this is exactly what Steve said, like when we're talking about, for example, detailed design, so pretty much end of design the process, I don't really care about LOD 300 for the connection between columns and primary beams. I more care about very generic information, but very strong understanding about the connections between those primary structure. So how many space do we need to keep away from the beam for the bolts, for plates, for all those elements that could take the space in the building? And it's a question like buildings are not difficult. They're pretty much all similar. So it could be some complications from building to building, but it's same group of questions from project to project. And if we're talking about, again, building services, it's no reason to place mechanical system at the upper zone if you know that they're going they will need access for future replacement or fire damper accessibility. So yeah, we definitely need to create maybe not like a standard, but best practices solutions for coordination. And yeah, talking about infrastructure, it actually was an insight when I had a chance to read this report. I would say it's quite important to understand that, and you mentioned in the report that about like 50% or 40% of budgets usually allocate for the taxpayer money. So it's our money, it's taxes and so on. So we definitely need to plan our project, as I already mentioned, we need to plan our projects better, think strategically, and talk to, like from design team, ask construction team, how much details do you really need from us? Because this is how we can save money, and this is how we can deliver projects better, because there's no reason to place LD 400 mechanical units if we know that could be changed during the construction stage. And yeah, and back into the main point, inspire new generation. So when for example, when I working from home and when I have my kids around, they always so happy to see how I'm navigating through the building. And recently they asked me when we walking at the school, they asked me what's the highlights on the asphalt, and I started to explain them. So we have underground services, this is how the place, and you know, even when they drew the Pikachu house now, they drew the drainage systems at the upper level, then cable trays. So they understand the sequences, they understand the logic of that. So this is how we can, improve our businesses.
And I think you've raised a really invaluable point there, and picking up on the thread around standardization, possibly over mandation. Our industry is, I guess, steeped in tradition of inventing words and siloing itself from the general public. LOD, who knows what that is? LOI, who knows what that is? You have to be in a very small circle to actually even understand what that is. I think your point around, do I need to model the nuts, bolts, plates, or just allow the space for that in the model, really kind of resonated a chord with me. Alex, so what are you thinking about? What are you seeing? Is over modeling beneficial, not beneficial? Because it does take time for the designers to create all of that effort. And if it is just going to change, then that's extra effort that's put into a project that could have been invested elsewhere in the project to mitigate problems. I'm keen to hear your thoughts on this and how technology advancing might help and alleviate this issue.
Yeah, well, I would go back to like the fundamental flaw that we're all hired at different times in our project's life cycle. And so for me to have the ability as a contractor to influence what should be modeled so the project can be delivered successfully often happens too late. And I don't have the opportunity with my engineering or architectural partner on the project to true that up. So at the end of the day, like we can model anything. We all know that, and we can model it to any level of development, any level of information we want. But are we aligned fundamentally from the beginning that we're going to use a common framework with common terminology and common standards to point to what we should do at certain times? And ultimately, whether it's graphical or non-graphical information, the question becomes, on a job like this, what is critical to be represented at this time so it doesn't impact the things that happen downstream? And I would even take it a step further, Jason, like if we're committed to building our projects virtually, which many of us are already kind of aligned in that space, are the other practitioners in the AECO ecosystem that are delivering that project, are they fundamentally aligned? Because BIM and VDC and technology people can be very aligned in that, but are the principals of our firms bought in and aligned with that? Knowing that the fact that our trade partners and everybody out in the field actually constructing these things are living and dying by these models and these digital deliverables. So if everybody can understand that that life cycle requires that upfront alignment on graphical and non-graphical information to be delivered by certain parties at a certain time, at a certain level of quality, then the chain starts to become more optimized, so that there's not these funky handoffs or misalignments between, I thought the deliverable was going to look like this, I got this, they're not the same. And no matter what standards that we use, it's the timing and the roles and the responsibilities of these firms and kind of rising that bar to the next level to say, BIM is part of the new way of doing business. VDC process or whatever digital process that you have is the new way of doing business. And in order to deliver that effectively, we need to bring that contracting curve forward. Owners have to start to recognize we all need to be at the table early so we can make the decision on, am I modeling all the nuts and bolts, or am I just reserving the space?
I really like where you're going there. And I'm mindful of time, and I do want to get, your final thoughts from each of you and open it up to some questions and answers of the panel or the audience that's out there around the world. Please drop your questions into the webinar system, and we'll try and get to some of the questions. But before I ask your final thoughts, what I'm hearing from today's conversation is it's more about people, process, and then technology. And I wonder in the last 25 years if we've had it back to front and we've tried to shoehorn technology into process and process into people. And are we at a point in time where we need to flip the conversation and get back to basics and build on top of that? Steve, do you want to go first?
100% agree. Yeah, this is we have a habit of making this overly complicated. I think this is a people industry. This is, it's the best industry in the world. You meet, people from all walks of life, trying to deliver an awesome built environment. So yeah, I think, getting people on board. I always remember I was fortunate enough to get a tour of Tower 1, World Trade Center, Vision Tower in New York. I was working with a company that was building it at the time, and I took some clients from Australia across there. And it's a tall commercial building, a lot of repetition floor by floor. And the BIM lead on the project, he was talking about some of the subcontractors, some of the trades, and it's very New York, so it was super interesting the way he was dealing with some of the subcontractors. But they were like, so resistant to change. They were like, no, don't understand it. Everything's always been done in 2D. And then he showed them, and he worked with them, and he coached them, and he spent that extra time. And that's what we encourage with IIMBE. Like we're educators and trainers, and there's still a massive portion of our industry that have no idea what even BIM is, never mind anything else that we've talked about today. So I think we've got to spend time with people. We've got to coach them on this journey. And when these subcontractors finished that building, they got their build cycles down from 18 weeks to 6 weeks, and they would just, we're never going back. We're never going back. You know what I mean? So I think it's those light bulb moments, and how do we take people on the journey? You can read about it all you want. You can listen all you want. It's you got to touch and feel this stuff. So how do we do that?
Eva?
In the last 5 years, I was working with absolutely different groups of people, like from Indonesia, Thailand, India, Singapore, Australia, and New Zealand, people from 20 years to up to 70 years old. Absolutely different people, different projects. But I would say, first of all, inspire people inspire people not build the model, but build the building. And second one, inspire people to think strategically, to think smart, few steps ahead. Just do not place your pipe wherever you want, but thinking about the zoning, and lead your team, like create something that they can, that could be like a ground for them to start their journey further, and let people feel involved. It's the biggest, I think it's one of the biggest risks when you have few teams involved in the project and they do not communicate even internally well. So let them link to each other and engage people to get feedbacks to each other, explain some mistakes or whatever it is, because it's the biggest risk when one of your team, it's drafters or engineers, not feeling really involved in the project. Yeah, it could be the problem. And trust me, technology will not help. Yeah.
Alex.
I would say as I'm looking at where we are, where we need to go, and I see that last slide, Jason, that you threw up there with some of the data around, like, you know, the demand for next gen tech and kind of the trends, and of course, you know, AI and automation was like the first one, right? But where my mind goes is there's a lot of AI and automation talk happening right now, and I think a lot of it is AI washing. I'm going to use that term. I've heard it before from somebody, and I'm going to start using it more. We've got to be very mindful that we don't get distracted by all the AI conversation right now. We need to double down and be really, really good at the things that make us profitable today and what makes an impact today. Yes, we need to pay attention to it, but AI tomorrow is not going to replace all of our jobs and what we do, and it's not going to totally replace the digital delivery process. Maybe it gets there at some point. I'm sure that, you know, it's likely possible, but it's going to be a companion to some degree. So with that being said, get really good at understanding people's end game, right? What's the end in mind for not just yourself and your team, but for other people's roles in their team, and get laser focused around how can everybody put on the table their wants, their desires, their interests, their motivations, what is going to drive business value for them. And the sooner you can do that early at the onset of a project, the better people will understand how to optimize the design and construction process for the entire team, not just for their team. And then we get to a value stream that is connecting all those stakeholders instead of these funky handoffs and, well, hey, I did my job, here you go, good luck, where then the cost overruns start to happen and the change management cycles start to break down. The sooner we can begin with the end in mind, with everybody's end game on the table, I think we start to become a leaner industry, a more thoughtful industry. When we get to a place where the people conversation, we've been saying it for many years, people, then process, and technology, the people conversation becomes so much easier, so that when you need to ask, hey, I do need the nuts and bolts for this water project because of these reasons, or you know what, I just need a spatial reservation. That becomes a much easier discussion now because you've already gotten that alignment early and putting everyone's wants and needs and thoughts on the table, so that people can be profitable and be successful, because we're all in business to make money. That's the name of the game, but we all want excellent project outcomes and we all want excellent client experiences. And so to me, you've got to put those cards on the table early so that we can envision a better future.
Excellent. A great way to wrap up today. You know, people, process, technology, and to your point about the AI washing, I remember 20 years ago, 25 years ago, it was all BIM washing. So let's learn our lesson from the past and not repeat that mistake, and keep our focus on people, projects, process, and the technology enhances the outcome. We've got one question that's come in. But before we go to the questions, and please, you know, audience out there, fire your questions through, and we'll have a look at them in the next few minutes. But there's one more poll to do. I'll flash it up quickly, and it's about ensuring that you get that link to that report. So for anyone that's on the call and that you want a follow-up around the report and get a link to the report, please answer the poll, and that will allow us to collect some details to send you the report. So the one question is probably more of a statement that's come through from the audience. It's probably a nod from us as panelists. I'm a firm believer that people is not the problem. No, It's people. It's a people problem, not a tech problem. I think we're all agreed with that. Really kind of keen to hear what are the next steps. Steve, you talked about collaborate. I was part of that group. We were very passionate 15 years ago, but what happened? Did we get busy?
Well, yeah, I was thinking about this the other day. I did put a comment in. Yeah, I'm so kind of passionate about reviving collaborate. It does wonder. I do wonder why that did fall away. Where's the next generation to take on that mantle? You know, we had collaborate at the time. We set up Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane. We try to kind of connect this, you know, industry around. Yeah, but anyway, let's certainly have a conversation. Let's try and revive, collaborate. I'd love to do that. I think, you know, forums like this are awesome. But what I was just thinking about major projects, in you know, it's a people project. It's a people problem, not technology. I don't know if you know the Crossrail story, but I think major projects for me are like Formula One. You know, they're, you know, bastions of innovation because they're normally 5+ years. They're normally, you know, mega billions of dollars. They can afford to kind of invest time and effort. And it's like, you know, ABS braking, you know, was Formula One, you know, 20 years ago, and it finally came down to your car at home. But Crossrail was fascinating for me. It was, you know, $17 billion project, 10+ years, and they had all these BIM requirements and information management requirements. And, you know, it wasn't the most innovative form of contract. There was 96 D&Cs, and they put these packages out to tender, and they said, well, you need a CDE and you need this software. So they started collating all this back and went, oh, wow. We're paying, you know, 200 grand per contract for a CDE, and we're paying 500 grand, and then industry wants training on top of it. So they said, right, let's take all of that money out of all those packages. Let's create an academy. And they put, I don't know the numbers, but it was 10,000+ industry folk, everyone from, you know, joiners, electricians, planners, designers, whoever it was. They put them all through this coordinated training, and, you know, those people are now proliferating other projects and other industries. So I think, you know, getting people using major projects to, you know, leverage the funds that they've got to then slowly dissipate innovation through the supply chain, I think is what I'd like to see.
A great way to end our panel discussion and webinar today. Again, I want to thank you all for joining us, and more importantly, the audience that attended online. It has been recorded. We will share it in time. It'll just take some time to process it. But, you know, people, process, technology. Thank you all again.